chapter. So we'll first recite it. Indriyani paranyahur. Recite after me.
इंद्रियाणि पराण्याहुः
Indriyebhya param manaha.
इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः
Manasasto para buddhir.
मनस्तस्तु परा बुद्धिः
यो बुद्धे परतस्तु saha.
यो बुद्धे परस्तस्तु सः
Indriyani paranyahur.
इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः
Indriyebhya param manaha.
इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः
मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः.
मनस्तस्तु परा बुद्धिः
यो बुद्धे परसस्तु सः.
यो बुद्धे परस्तस्तु सः
Recite.
इन्द्रियाणि परमाहुः
इंद्रियाणि परण्याहुः.
इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः
इंद्रियेभ्यः परं मनः.
मनस्तस्तु परा बुद्धिर्
मनस्तस्तु परा बुद्धिः.
यो बुद्धे परतस्तु सः
यो बुद्धे परतस्तु सः. Pragyamanti ji, are you free? Can you
Yes, yes,
recite it?
Prabhuji.
Recite.
Indriyani paranyahur
इंद्रियाणि परण्याहुः.
indriyebhya param manah
इंद्रियेभ्यः परं मनः.
manas manasastu para buddhir
मनस्तस्तु परा बुद्धिः.
yo buddhe para tastu
Prastutah.
saha.
यो बुद्धे परतस्तु सः. Yeah. So let's see. So actually in the previous verse, what we discussed in the previous verse? Mm. 41. 41. So तस्मात्म इंद्रियाणि आद्यो नियम भरतर्षभ पापानं प्रजह्येनं ज्ञान विज्ञान नाशम. So, O Bharatarshava, you have to control your senses from the very beginning, and because it destroys this lust destroys both the jnana and the vijnana. And pampanam, this is the very cause of sin. It's the very cause of sin. Actually, lust only engages us in sinful activities. That's why you have to curb your lusty mentality into love of Godhead. So, for that, you have to control your senses from the very beginning. Tasmad tvam indriyani ado niyama bharatarso, in a regulative process. To regulative way, you have to engage your senses. That's what he is saying. And further he actually explains the hierarchy of the sitting places of lust in this verse. In this verse number 42, Krishna explains the hierarchy of the sitting places of the lust. So the translation of Baldev Vidyabhushan, it's quite interesting in the purport. He says, we'll first read the or discuss the purport of Baldev Vidyabhushan, then we'll go to the purport of Prabhupada. So what it says, so Indriyani Paranyahu. Indriyani means senses. Paran means superior. Ahur means it is said that the senses are superior to the matter. It is said that the senses are supreme, superior to the matter. And indriyabhya param mana. And this indriyabhya, this in the senses, more than the senses are what? Param mana. The mind is the superior to senses. Because when the mind gives the consent to the senses, then only it is engaged in the sense object. On its own, the senses cannot be engaged in the sense object. That's why mind is the superior. Mind is superior to the senses. Actually, senses are not independent. You can see. So you can see the chariot of the bodily chariot. You can see you see that the charioteer. That is the intelligence, and the reins which is controlling the senses of the horse-like senses. The reins is compared to the mind. So the horses are not independent actually. The senses are not independent. It is under the control of the mind. Because if mind gives the consent, then only the senses can be engaged in, or the senses will be engaged in the sense object. That's why the mind is superior to the senses. Okay. And more than the mind is what? The buddhi. Indriyani param mana. Manasastu para buddhi. Buddhi is superior to the mind. Because buddhi is what? Buddhi is intelligence. Which intelligence? It is it decides. It takes the decision. Which one he'll choose the option actually. This is the mind. This is the intelligence. Intelligence decides where to engage or which one to choose. So that's why intelligence is that a discerning factor. Which one is good, which one is bad, which one is Shreya, which one is prayer. Yes, Bro.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Ji, bro.
Yes, Prabhuji, I think you are recording from this ID and this recording only lasts to 40 minutes.
Which ID? This one?
Yes, Prabhuji, from this spiritual sky one.
Is it so?
Yes, Prabhuji, I think we should record from Ranjit Salaria ID because it has license ID and it is recording up to 1 hour or extra.
Let's see. If it is so, then we'll today itself on the night time I'll request Rajit Prabhu to actually give that password. I've not actually registered it in this laptop. Today only I'll finish this job today. After class only I'll do. So
Okay,
anyway,
Prabhuji, if possible, I'll record from my laptop from Ranjit Prabhu's ID.
okay, it's okay.
Yes, Prabhu.
You can also record it. So
Yes, Prabhu.
record it. That's good, man. Yeah, the discerning of the conforming intelligence, actually, it conforms whether it is to be engaged or not. Actually, mind actually acts according to the dictation or the direction of intelligence. And intelligence is captured by whom? The lust. So whatever the lust dictates or directs, accordingly, intelligence acts, and according to the dictates of the intelligence, the mind acts, and according to the dictates of the mind, the senses acts. In this way, lust has actually hijacked the total complete system. But here he is saying, Indriyani paranya indriyabhya param manaha manasastu parabuddhi. And intelligence is the superior to the mind, and buddhi paratastu saha. And what is superior to the intelligence is Atma. But Atma is superior to the intelligence. This is the hierarchy of the sitting places of lust. So it is said that the senses are supreme, but superior to the senses is the mind, and superior to the mind is the intelligence, and superior to the intelligence is Atma. So Baldev Vidyabhushan is saying in his purport that actually it's a in a dialogical way is presenting that as if now Arjuna is asking the question to Krishna. What is question? Like now you have shown that lust can be destroyed by controlling the senses. In the previous words, say no. So from the very beginning, you have to control the senses. If you want to control or conquer the lust, then you have to control your senses from the very beginning. So now Arjuna is asking, you are saying that lust can be destroyed by controlling the senses. And how to control the senses? By inclining them to Niskama Karma Yoga. By inclining them to Niskama Karma Yoga. And when you engage yourself in Niskama Karma Yoga, then actually knowledge dawns. Knowledge dawns. Or you can, in another way, you can say that engage your senses in devotional service of the Lord without any fruitive mentality. So it is compared to a dam which is holding the water back. Which is holding the water back. The closed dam. Restraining the senses compared to a closed dam, which holds the water back. Till the time it is engaged in Niskama Karma Yoga and the devotional service, it is not under the control of the lust. It is in a regulative way. It has been engaged in a regulative way. According to the injunction of the Shastra, according to the dictates of the spiritual master or whatever. It has been engaged in a regulative way. Just like the water reservoir, all the waters are used for the constructive purposes. It is used for irrigation, it is used for producing hydroelectricity power. But if the water is released or the dam is broken, then it has a disastrous effect. It overflows or overflows and overflowed the whole villages and areas and all land portion actually. It has its own devastating effect. So if the water portion or that's why it is compared to the dam. While not performing, and again he is saying that but at the time of performing activities related to the body, while the senses are engaged in the devotional service, it's okay. It is just like it is compared to a closed dam that's actually keeps the water or held the water back, and it is used in a regulative way. But if the senses are engaged in performing activity related to the body, and while not performing prescribed actions, and we let the senses be free to engage itself in sense objects, again that's lost, revive. Like water is freed from the dam. So it's a situation. Sometimes we engage ourselves in yoga and sometimes in bhoga, like that. So you're not able to engage in the sense at 24 hours a day. Till the time it is engaged, it's okay. There is no fruitive mentality and we'll fix from it. But once it is engaged in the body, related to the body, then again the lust revive. So what to do at that time? Arjun is asking. So in second chapter 2.59, in second chapter 2.59, Krishna is what is saying? 2.59. Indriyabhya parayat. Oh, sorry. 2.59. What is it? विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिनः रसवर्जं रसोप्यस्य परम दृष्ट निवर्तते. Very important for this is. (2.59). Very slow. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dena. So the conditioned soul, what they do, they restrain their senses forcibly. Forcibly they restrain their senses. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya, without giving them input or without supplying the demands of the mind. But it doesn't mean that they have no, actually they have conquered all the desires. Just like it has been given in the example or given the purport, the example that suppose doctor prescribes some sort of medicines, and while taking the medicine, he also instruct the patient not to do certain activities and not to take certain items. If one sugar patient there, he prohibits what not to take, prohibits to take what? Sugar or any kind of sweet item. But while following that instruction, it doesn't mean that he is free from all kind of attractions. He is following the instructions of the doctor, but still he has the desire to enjoy such kind of items. Like that, a conditioned soul, knowingly he is restricting his senses, no doubt. But his mind, and within his mind, he has that desire to enjoy. Desire for sense gratification still lurks in his heart. But outwardly is instead, restricting his senses. So this kind of propensity for sense gratification, when it get vanished from the Krishna is a param drishta nivartate. When one is self-reliant, then only the lust will go forever from consciousness. Because the lust is so deep-rooted and it has contaminated our very consciousness, that when the consciousness is purified, fully purified, 100% pure, after realizing our own self, then only the lust can be eradicated. So param drishta nivardate. So you have to give the mind the higher test. When the mind tests the higher bliss, condensed bliss and knowledge, condensed bliss, then the mind automatically rejects sense gratification and engages or immersed in the condensed bliss, which is the very fountain, and the soul is the very fountainhead of bliss, condensed bliss. So that is the higher test. And higher test will be, we will get the higher test by chanting Hare Krishna. Higher test in chanting Hare Krishna mantra. So Vishaya nivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopesya param drishta nivartate. That's it saying. So in the second chapter, the 2 verses, that last will be completely destroyed by realizing the Atma. Otherwise, no. So that is the translation, or what is it? What again says is, so the wise say that the senses are super to the body, matter. Matter means here not the sense object, the bad matter. How the senses are super to the body? Because the body is made of 5 gross elements, and the senses are just the occupants of this body. The senses have occupied over the body. If the body dies, still the senses remains in the subtle form. It never dies, it never destroyed. Body is destroyed, but the senses are never destroyed. When the human being leaves his gross body, all these 5 sense of that sense object, five karmendriya, 5 jnanendriya, and 5 tanmatras, and man buddhi ahankar. All these 18 elements goes with that subtle body. It goes with the subtle body. So the senses actually remains in the subtle body after the gross body is destroyed. That's why it's supported to the matter. The senses are superior to the mind. The mind is superior to the senses. How the mind is superior to the senses? Because the mind set the senses in motion. On its own, the senses never functions. It has no power to function. Till the time the mind sets the senses in motion. And it happens in the during what is it? Waking state. In waking state, the mind actually directs or sets the senses in motion. Waking state. And in the dreaming state, still the mind becomes the ruler of the senses. And while the senses are merged in the senses, merged in the mind. The mind becomes the ruler in the dream state also. Because the mind only broods over all the things that has happened before, the past. Or if we have some fear, then it also imagines what may happen in future. Either the mind remains either in the past and or in the future. That's why in the dream state also the mind, he is the ruler, he is the leader. But the senses actually they are not inactive in the dream state. That doesn't work in the dream state. Or all the senses they get merged in the mind. And now the intelligence is actually superior to the mind. The function of the determining truth. What is the function of the intelligence? Intelligence actually determines the truth. Nishchaya. And brings about the mental function of decision. Sankalpa and Vikalpa. It selects and rejects. That which is superior to the intelligence is Jiva. Actually, intelligence discriminates which one is eternal and which one is not eternal, permanent. If the intelligence is covered by ignorance, then it is in delusion, and all the temporary things seems to be permanent for it. If the intelligence is deluded by Maya or the lust, he craves for all temporary things and he considered all the temporary things to be eternal. That is the deluded intelligence selects or confirms, and accordingly the mind is engaged. And the senses actually enjoys the sense object. The mind actually the enjoyer. Actually, soul is the real enjoyer. So which is realized as the distinct from the body? Which one? Soul. Soul is the real enjoyer, which is distinct from the body. Not only body, the senses and intelligence. And which is the complete destruction of the last. When you are attached or when you realize your own self, then only the lust will be destroyed. But again, Baldev Vidyadhara is saying, he is quoting one, it is also said, it is also there in purport of Prabhupada. The indriyabhya parahyartha arthabhyascha param manaha manasastu para buddhi manasasta para buddhi buddhir atma mahan para. What is saying? Indriyabhya parahyarthe. The sense objects are superior to the mind, to the senses. The sense objects are superior to the senses, or more powerful than the senses. But here, Krishna is saying that the matter, the senses are more powerful, or the senses are superior to the matter. Matter means here the body. Because in the purport also you'll see the Prabhupada is saying that the senses are actually the lost actually enjoy the sense object through the bent of the senses. These are the vent only. Senses are only vent through which the sense object, the mind is enjoying the sense object. These are the windows, you can say, windows. They are the windows. So indriyabhya parahyartha arthabhyascha param manaha. The sense objects are superior to the senses. How? Because the senses, the sense objects have the power to attract the attention or attract the senses. Actually, the sense objects attract the senses. That's why the senses, if it is not under the control of and it actually gives information to the mind. After being allured by the sense object, when the senses are allured by the sense object, or infatuated by the sense object, or deluded by the sense object, infatuated by the sense object, mesmerized by the sense object, then the senses gives actually information to the mind. And mind, because mind has overpowered the intelligence. Intelligence no capacity to control the mind in a conditioned state. The mind never listened to the dictates of intelligence. Then mind itself decides, oh, go for it, no problem at all. Go for it. If it is very pleasurable, then go for it. Intelligence never interferes here because it has been covered over by lust. So the role of intelligence to check whether it is really enjoyable, whether it is really permanent, whether it is everlasting. That is the role of the intelligence. But the intelligence is covered over, then it will just go for flickering pleasure, fleeting pleasure. Then eventually it gets frustrated, eventually it gets cheated, eventually it is beaten, slapped by whom? The illusory potency, that is Maya. So that's why it is saying that the senses are what? The sense objects are actually superior to the senses. And the mind is superior to the senses because it is the root of all the actions. Without mind, there will be no actions. Who will engage the senses in the sense object or in any action? Mind actually engages the senses. That's why mind is superior to senses. And the discerning and conforming intelligence that is superior to the mind. And mind is always doubtful. Mind is always doubtful. Sankalpa and Vikalpa, always doubtful. Mind is. But actually, intelligence has the mind to conform it, to discern it. But the intelligence is deluded, or intelligence is covered over by the lust, then everything depends on the sensual mind. Mind actually creates havoc for that living entity. And Jiva or Atma, the Jivatma, the enjoyer, superior to the intellect. Because it is the means of enjoyment or experience. Who will experience it? While reading that DOS course, you might have that heard that one. That not only in the waking state, even the dreaming state and the deep sleep state, at that time the real enjoyer is the soul. That is the real enjoyer, the real experiencer actually. He's experiencing everything else, not the mind, not the intelligence. So this Atma is the master of the body, senses, and internal functions. All the internal functions, whatever is happening, actually this is the real enjoyer and he is the real experience. He is experiencing everything else. At the same time, the activities for bodily maintenance will be achieved for the realized soul due to the force of previous practice. It's a very good example it has been given here. So, so what happens for a realized soul? The activities of the bodily maintenance will be achieved for the realized soul due to the force of previous practice. Like the continued turning of a wheel after it is set in motion. Suppose you have put up the switch of the fan. Put up the switch of the fan, but still the fan moves on. It never stops instantly. It runs for a little while, then it gets stopped. So even though all the karmic reaction, everything is destroyed, still the sanskaras actually, what is remain, and that sanskaras or previous impression in the mind, little bit that is left over, actually that actually helps him to maintain this body. For a realized soul, he never does a single thing according to the dictates of kama or lust. Whatever he does, according to the dictates of the super soul or Krishna, is fully surrendered to Krishna. Whatever Krishna says, he does. But how then he maintains his body? He maintains his body only because of the past sanskara that is left over in the mind. That is the past sanskara, the impression that is in the mind. That actually makes him act. Just like the continuing turning of a wheel after it is set in motion. After it is set in motion, in that way, the realized soul, due to the force of the previous practice, he performs his activities, day-to-day activities, and it is not impelled by the appearance of lust, reappearance of the lust. Prabhupada says, so these are the outlets. These are the outlets not to use when there is superior consciousness. These senses are useless when one is in Krishna consciousness. The soul makes the direct connection with the Supreme Lord. So here the ultimately the bodily functions ends in the Supreme Soul. All the bodily functions end in the Supreme Soul. Bodily action means the function of the senses. And the stopping of the senses means stopping of all bodily functions. So outwardly, he doesn't perform such any kind of bodily activities. Because all the senses are transcendental and pure. Nice part. So what is the then what is the here I'm just sharing it. Yeah, this is the purport. Working senses are supported to all matter, and mind is higher than senses. And intelligence is higher than the mind. Soul is higher than the intelligence. That's what the whole theme of the 42 verse. And here it is said the senses are superior to the matter because the senses are different outlets for the activities of lust. Here the solution is given. Understand the constitution of the soul and engage in the direct connection with Krishna and Krishna consciousness. After understanding that I am not the body, I am the part and parcel of Krishna, then he acts in that consciousness. In that way, he is free from all this contamination and he is free from all the mental bondage. But bodily action means the function of the senses, and stopping the senses means stopping all the actions. So when the living entity is fixed in the constitutional position, he never performs such kind of bodily activities. He performs everything else in the transcendental part, that is in soul part. Therefore, the soul has to be directly engaged in the Supreme. Then all other subordinates, intelligence, mind, follow its dictates and direction. So that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Cheta Darpan. You have to begin your process from the very consciousness. The consciousness is purified, then the false ego is purified, then the intelligence is purified, the mind is purified, ultimately the other senses are purified. By chanting Hare Krishna. That is the secret here. So solution to the whole problem, directly understanding the constitutional position of the soul is the real solution. By complete surrender under the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By intelligence, one engages the mind in Krishna consciousness. So here the analogy is given, even though the senses are very strong like serpents, they are no more effective than serpents with broken fangs. Their fangs are broken, means they are not injurious. They cannot do any harm to you. Senses will be there, but they will not have any harmful effect. So even though the soul is the master of the intelligence and the mind and the senses also, still, unless it is strengthened by association with Krishna and Krishna consciousness, there is very chance of falling down to the agitated mind. So unless it is strengthened by strengthened by the association with Krishna in Krishna consciousness. How to associate with Krishna? By chanting Hare Krishna mantra. If one chants Hare Krishna Maha then Prabhupada said he gets direct association of Krishna. There is very chance of parindavan if he doesn't do that. On our own we cannot purify it.